Finally, the legendary battle between Sukuna and Kashimo finally begins. This week's chapter starts up immediately where it stopped last week, with Kashimo pulling up on Sukuna. But before they can even interact with one another, we can see the long-awaited arrival of Yura. And the one question on my mind was it Sukuna that told her not to interfere with the battle with him and Gojo? Or did Sukuna send her somewhere to retrieve that weapon? Now, a lot of people say that this is Yaruzu's weapon that she made for Sukuna, but I don't think that that's the case. I think that this is Sukuna's OG weapon, just that he stashed it away and he told Urame to go and look for it, and now she's bringing it back to Sukuna. These are the questions that I hope at least gets answered this week or next week. We see Urame standing on top of a block of ice, and just before she can even go to Sukuna's side, we see that the legendary Akari pulls up on her and challenges Urame. Now, before she can even do anything, he deploys the domain expansion and traps Urame in it, but the lump of ice is still going towards Sukuna. And one thing I can definitely say with the fact is that Sukuna is not going to help Urame with the battle with Akari because of Sukuna's one and only way of living, which is strength make right. So we know that Sukuna only surrounds himself with people that he believes to be strong, and that is something that has been established since the time that we already knew the character of Sukuna. Changing our perspective to the battle with Sukuna versus Kashimo, we see that the ice suddenly evaporates and we see a weapon drop on Sukuna's hand, and it is the legendary weapon we saw him with the first time we saw his real appearance. With the weapon, Sukuna launches a powerful lightning attack towards Kashimo, but Kashimo tanks it because of his lightning style cost energy. This was the first red flag for Kashimo. He asked Sukuna a question, which was, did you become the strongest or were you born as the strongest? Now, if you are a JJK fan, you would know that this question was similar to the question Geto asked Gojo, which was he the strongest because he's Satoru Gojo, or are you Satoru Gojo because you are the strongest? And unlike Gojo, who was left dumbfounded when he was asked this question, Sukuna gave a straight and honest answer, which was he didn't know and he didn't care, honestly. Because he was born an unwanted child. Kashimo then asked another question: how did Sukuna interact with others without knowing weakness? How did he show affection or mercy? But also, too, if you're a JJK fan, you know that Sukuna himself personally answered this question to Yuji, which was in chapter 214, page 12, when he said to Yuji that, the weak weak? Why do the weak cling so fiercely to life? That suffering is normal. Suffering is nature. People are meant to be chewed up. Sukuna called Kashimo extravagant and says that Gojo was the same, which honestly speaking, they are both the same because they don't still know the answer to that question, and apparently Sukuna is the only one that knows the answer to that question, and himself is okay with what he is. Sukuna taps his head with the weapon and calls upon Kashimo to fight, and finally the legendary Kashimo activates his course technique, which is called Genju Kuasaku. Then Kashimo proceeds to land a punch on Sukuna, which he successfully does, then follows up with a breath type of attack towards Sukuna. The narrator explains that Kashimo's course technique remakes his body to be able to blast any kind of attack which Kashimo himself can create with his course energy. Now, before I can even comment on this attack, I have to see the full comic. So that will be on when the official comic release. That's why I can really comment on this attack. So right now, I'm going to leave my comments so I do the review, the official review of chapter 237. From what the spoiler says, Kashimo's course technique enhances his ability to make whatever he blasts evaporate, which is very OP, if I might say. The problem is, once Kashimo's technique ends, Kashimo's body will break apart, which is the reason why it's officially confirmed that it's a one-time use. Now, the panel switched to Sukuna, and the narrator explains that Sukuna has a method of actually reviving his original body, which can only be done once, without reverse course technique. And now this thing is making me think that then can he do it with course technique? Because the way they phrased it in these spoilers, I'm really not sure. So I guess that when the official release, I'll be able to get a definite answer to my question. So as I was saying, the narrator says Sukuna has a method of reviving his original body, without using reverse course technique, but Sukuna intentionally hid it. Now, probably because of the fight he had with Gojo, he didn't want to go with his original body because he didn't know if Gojo had a technique that could literally or permanently damage his body. And that was a very smart idea. And that was a very smart plan on his side. But he finally uses it here, and the chapter ends with the narrator saying the reincarnation has been restarted. And that means Sukuna officially has his body back, which is very, very hype. I cannot wait for the official release, and definitely I cannot wait for next week. I'm already waiting for next because I want to see what Sukuna is capable of doing with his real body. That's just going to be phenomenal.